All right, shalom everyone. I think that picnic wiped a few people out. A little bit lighter today. You know, last feast, I think I probably mentioned this. I haven't mentioned this at every feast, but I should have mentioned at the beginning of the feast the idea of pacing yourself. Because some of you are not used to having so much fun. And you're staying up later than you normally do and all that kind of good stuff. Well, welcome to Level Up. The last two sessions, we're going to do them back to back. Chantel, do you know if there's going to be a break at 11:30 and then it starts again? Okay. We go straight through? Okay. Good. All right. So this is the last two sessions of the Level Up. I want to welcome any of the Gadol children, the teenagers. Welcome. We are certainly going to be addressing you guys as well today. All right. All right. So hopefully you guys have gotten something out of this class so far. It is an abbreviated version of the class. I mean, normally each session was like 4 hours, right? And we've already done 4 sessions in like 6 hours. Okay, so, that's not the normal thing. What I will be looking to do is I'll be talking to our web guy and having Tommy put the actual full classes that I did in the previous time on the MTOI site. Okay, so you guys can access all that. So at least you'll know what you're watching because you've already gone through this, right? My throat is mostly worn out, not from being under the weather, just from overusing it. So I am sucking on a lozenge. I do apologize. All right, now, with the Level Up, when you do get to see the stuff on the website, I've taught this class twice. So it was 6 sessions, 2 classes. Everything was the same, except that I didn't have notes, which means that I did it a little bit different each time. So maybe you got a little bit nuanced differences. So you can watch all 12 sessions, when we put it on the site, okay? All right, so today we're talking about finance, right? Of the 7 areas, we're talking about finance. And finance is probably the area that we know we need to give the most attention to that we don't, okay? It's the one that creates obvious problems where some other areas don't create obvious problems, right? I know we have challenges in our relationships and sometimes in our, mental or emotional areas and those kind of things in our health, but really those finances can really make a problem. Okay, so we're going to talk about that today, all right? So with finances, the point I want to make for you guys, it's about what I would call lifestyle, okay, lifestyle and wealth. But I don't want you to think of wealth as meaning millions and millions of dollars. Certainly it could be, but that's not what the way I define the word, okay? Rich, okay, we're going to say rich. I'll use that as meaning you have lots and lots of money. Wealth means that you actually have the money you need to be able to use and the time that you can use to enjoy life, okay? So you can be wealthy at pretty much almost any income theoretically, right? I mean, I'm sure we can go to some countries that don't have quite the modern amenities that we have today here, and people are incredibly happy and at peace with their lives, and they don't have any of the quote-unquote riches that we do, okay? So wealth is about time and money, okay? A lot of people out there have plenty of money, but they're working so hard they have no time. Or they've got plenty of time, but they don't have any money to enjoy the time because these things, things in life cost money, okay? And so we want to look at things first from making sure that we get to cover our needs, and then maybe we can also start getting some of those things we actually want as well, all right? The lifestyle. So the areas that we cover in lifestyle is income. That affects your lifestyle. I'm sure we can agree to that. Your spending also has a lot to do with lifestyle. Any debt that you already have or you might be thinking about getting into. And budgeting, so you kind of know where the money's going and where you intentionally desire it to go, all right? We're going to talk about having emergency funds. We're going to talk about retirement. We're going to talk about giving, as in your ability to help other people, all right, philanthropy, and legacy, your long-lasting impact on others. Okay, there are verses that say things like, if you do not take care of your children's children, you're worse than an infidel. Wow. Now, bear in mind, with taking care of them doesn't mean that they do nothing and you've now enabled and entitled them. But you shall have provided them with what they need to be successful, which doesn't necessarily mean money. Maybe it's instruction, guidance. Maybe it's the modeling that you did. They can model after you and see what to do and do it right, okay? But it's providing for them what they need so they can be successful. Okay, we're going to talk about those things. All right, so money. I know it's like a subject not everybody wants to talk about, but money changes everything, okay? It changes things. When you don't have it, you make different decisions than when you do have it. It's just the reality we live in, okay? So I don't want anybody going, oh, all you care about is money. No, but money affects how I get to do or not do or deal with things I do care about. Does that make sense? The things I care about are affected by how I deal with money, right? Money does solve problems. Okay, they'll say, well, money doesn't fix everything. No, it doesn't. If your head's all messed up, your relationships are all messed up, it might not fix everything. But you know what it does do? Okay, it does solve some of the problems, because if you think about it, think about some of the problems that you have that could be fixed if you had an income that was better, or you had a budget that was better, whatever. That you had your cash flow was better. Okay? Now, bear in mind, people with lots of money could have the same problems you have with less money if they just don't know how to spend right and budget right, and they get into all kinds of debt. They're broke at a higher tax bracket. You understand what I'm saying? Don't think for a second that, well, you know, I make $40,000 a year. Man, if I made $100,000 a year, I'd be great. Maybe. There are a lot of broke people who make more than that because they overspent. They don't understand how to respect, this tool called money. But if you don't think that money solves problems, you probably never had any. I'm just saying, because it does. I've been broke more than once. And I know that when I wasn't broke, a lot of my broke problems went away. Okay? Different problems. But at least, when you're not broke, at least you can drive to your problems in a better car. At least you have that going on. Okay? Or you can go to bed miserable at night in a better house or something, okay? I mean, that's still something. Okay. When money is not a worry, you get to focus on the things that are important. Do we all understand that there are two activities that take up basically 2/3 of our life? You sleep a third of your life, about 7-8 hours. That's what they recommend, right? It's a third of a day. And then you spend at least a third of a day in your efforts to earn money, to make money. That's a big part of your life. If you had that under control, you'd be able to focus on some other things. Because some of you, even if your job is limited to those 8 hours, and by the way, there are jobs that you go to, and when you leave, that's it. You're not thinking about it anymore. There are other jobs that you leave, and you're still on the job even when you leave, okay? Like this one. All right, so the thing is, though, the ability to then focus on other things is diminished if you're distracted by the financial challenges. Okay, does that make sense? If you go home from work, and then you're faced with some bills or this, or something breaks that you can't fix because you don't have the money, it's always distracting. It also causes, obviously, the number one cause of fights in a relationship is money, okay? Go ask all the counselors out there who do couples counseling. The number one problem is money. Now, they'll say the number one problem is communication, but often it has to do with money, okay? So when money's involved, the issue is involved, there's a distraction, okay? So when the money is not the issue, when that issue is solved, there's no more distraction. You can now work on you. Can we all understand that what I've been preaching for the last couple of years especially is the idea of we need to work on ourselves, right? As we are doing the one thing we're here to do, which is become Him, right? So to be able to focus our attention on working on ourselves, this money thing has to be handled. It's a huge distraction, okay? All right, areas of concern that distract us, right? I don't know how I worded this. My English was bad on my notes. Okay, so one area is having enough money to have your desired lifestyle. How about housing and transportation issues? Anybody have them on a regular basis? It's because you don't have enough money, okay? Those of you that said, nope, You probably have enough money, okay? Debt elimination. Anybody feel stressed because you're in debt? Okay? I don't mean the people that don't have debt. I mean, if you have debt, does it stress you? Yes. Okay? What about the idea of planning for your retirement? Or young people planning to be out there on your own? You know, be able to exit your parents' house and start doing your own thing, right? All right. So, and how about giving? I'm not even talking about like to the ministry, just in general. Maybe you'd like to be able to donate to some foundation that's important to you. Let's say you had a family member that died of some disease and there's a foundation for that you'd like to support or something. Well, you have to have money for that, right? Okay. All right, let's start over here. Okay, so with finances, just like we did the other days, you got to start off with a real good idea of the you are here. Actually, this is not the right one. There we go. All right, you are here. So we're going to talk about doing a really strong assessment on exactly where you are. Because you know what? A lot of you don't even have any idea where you really are in your budget, in your finances. I've done budgeting and financial counseling with people who had no idea just how, we use the word upside down. Upside down means you have not enough money to make it through the month. You're at a negative on a monthly basis. Okay, more outgo than income. All right, now. And then you have this destination you want to get to, right? Now, let's say you young people, okay? Over here, okay? You're in your parents' house, okay? But you want to get out of there and you want to get to an apartment or a house or something. So we'll call that IH, independent housing, okay? You're on your own. That's going to take money. It's going to take some sort of cash flow. Okay, so you got to have to figure out what is the dollars you need and generating not just once, but on a regular basis to pay the bills every month to be able to get out here. Why is this important? Okay, I don't want you to think that your parents, although this may be true, but I don't want you to think that they just want you out of the house. Okay? I mean, maybe your relationship is a little challenged and they do just, well, no, I want them out of the house. But you should want to be out of the house, okay? And the reason you should is because you also are on a path of growth. And you know what? That growth, and by the way, I'm also talking to you older than young people, like 30s, 40s, that are still living in your parents' house. You're not growing like you should, okay? Unless you have a health-challenged parent that you're caring for, okay, that cannot take care of themselves, you should not be there. Live next door, live somewhere else, but don't be in the house. Your growth can't take place over here. It has to be over here. Okay, you have to get out there into independent housing. All right, now, for the rest of you that already moved out, all right, whatever age you're at, okay, your destination is, at some point, you're going to stop working or work a whole lot less or whatever it is that you're planning to do. We'll call that retirement, okay? I don't know what that looks like to you. We'll call it retirement. But you know what? Being ready for retirement is not something you can do when you get there. It has to be done in advance. By the way, young people, the same thing. You can't just go from your parents' house and move out. You need to have certain things in line so that you can move out. You got to be ready to handle all of the life expenses that you're going to have. You're going to need to have transportation. You got to be able to pay for a car, for gas, for insurance, okay, for repairs, oil changes. Yes, the oil does need to be changed, okay? Young people forget that sometimes. So do some adults. All right, so, and then for the rest of us, you know, let's assume you're 30 now. Well, where do you need to be, you know, at 40, at 50, at 60, into whatever retirement is? We'll call that like 65 plus, okay? Because if you need to be here, there's a certain level you should be at by the time you're here, and here to get there successfully. Okay? If you did not do what you were supposed to do at this level, and let's say you're starting right there, you got less time to get it done. Okay? Well, let's say you didn't do it until here, 50-something. Now you're really in trouble. You got a lot less time. Can we all agree that if you have more time, things are generally easier? Okay? Now, so I want to make sure that we're really thinking about how this all plays out. Now, also recognize, and we're going to talk about this in a second, okay? Remember this chart, 0, okay? So the positive stuff is up in here. This is where it's positive, okay? Down here is negative, negative, negative. Everything on this is, you want to be up here in this quadrant here. But a lot of you are somewhere down here. You're not making enough money, or your bills are too high, or some combination. We got to get you to 0, so then you can start doing this, all right? But we got to get you to 0 first. All right, let's see what else is on my papers. All right, well, let's talk about some levels, those levels that I was just mentioning. I'll get to this whole idea. Look, by the way, some of you also may want to work for yourself, and we'll talk about that eventually, okay? So don't think I won't talk about that, because working for yourself, I think, is the greatest idea, but the most easy to screw up, okay? Because they don't generally teach you how to do that correctly in school or anywhere. They probably don't even teach it at all in school, mostly, okay? Now, so let's talk about level 0, and you can identify what level you're at, all right? So level 0 is one income stream. Okay, this is 0 or less, 0 or minus. You probably have one income stream. So what's an income stream? Any way that money comes in on a regular basis. You work part-time, you work full-time, you got some little side business. Most people at this point only have one of these, one way that money comes in, okay? So it's from a job or being self-employed. You struggle to pay for your needs. At this level, you're struggling to pay for needs. In other words, at the end of the month, you're really tight, and you may be short sometimes, and you may not be short sometimes, and you've been late on payments on things. And by needs, what are needs? Housing, clothing, food, okay, transportation, medical. That's probably your 5 needs, all right? So basically, people at this level are struggling to pay for their needs. Spending prioritization is an ever-changing mess between wants and needs. So in other words, usually people at this level are struggling to differentiate and make sure they have the discipline to make sure they're handling needs first and not wants. Okay, so prioritization is a problem, because all of a sudden something pops up, you're like, oh, I want that. And the brain forgets to say, yeah, but we don't have the money for that. Okay? Well, let's redefine broke a little bit. Just because I've had people tell me they're broke, but they have cable TV, and they have internet, and they have cell phones, and they go out and get coffee. You're not broke. You're stupid. Sorry, did I say that out loud? If you don't have the money, don't tell me you're broke when you spend the money on the wrong things. Why? I don't have a car. Why don't I have a car? Well, I don't have enough money for a car, but you have a cell phone, and you've got internet, and you've got apps, and all this other stuff you spend money on. Okay? None of us actually is, by the real definition, broke. You're struggling to have enough money to do what you want. Can we understand that? Broke is when you can't pay for your needs. And if you are broke, then stop spending money on stuff that's not a need. The money has to go to the needs. I got people telling me they can't afford supplements and medications because they don't have enough money, but yet I know they've got a cell phone and other things. And some of you are like, but I need my cell phone. Come on, really? If you're over 30 years old, 40 years old, don't tell me you didn't live without a cell phone. Okay? There weren't any cell phones till I was in my 30s almost, okay? Cell phone. And then they were just phones. Couldn't do anything but make a call, okay? You need your cell phone. Nothing in your system needs to be doing this all day, okay? Not when you're broke. Okay, broke people. I had somebody complaining to us how they needed help and benevolence and this and that. And one of the things they wanted was help paying for their iPhone bill. I said, how do you have an iPhone bill? You can't even pay for your shelter and your food. But I need my phone. No, you don't. You want your phone. You become dependent on this device. Young people, I know you might find this shocking, but we didn't have these when we were your age. They didn't exist. When people were not with you, you didn't have any idea what they were doing, and you had no way to reach them. Isn't that weird? If I went out, my parents couldn't just call me or track me on 360 or whatever. They had no idea where I was. Or if you and I are friends and we're trying to meet up and somehow you don't show up where I'm thinking you're supposed to be, I can't reach you. There's no way to contact people. We had a whole different world. All right, so level 0, people have no budget. Okay? People with more money also have no budget. Most people just figure, well, I'm paying my bills, okay, what do I need a budget for? Okay? Anybody understands the term, and you own this term, that you waste time sometimes? Okay? You know how we waste most things? By not having a plan to use it in a certain way. Okay? So if I haven't allocated and planned my time, I could do something that's wasting time. Let's say I ran into you, and we're hanging out, and we're spending time talking, and I had other things that I was supposed to do. And maybe I can say, okay, look, you and I, we can have 5-10 minutes, and that's fine. But the next thing you know, 2 hours disappears, and I didn't get the things done I needed to do because I got so wrapped up in the fun thing I was doing right at that moment. Okay? Same thing with money. Anything that's a resource, and the two biggest resources you deal with are time and money. Anything that's a resource must be intentionally and with purpose allocated. Otherwise, it gets wasted. It just flows wherever it flows, okay? Because a lot of you, I can tell you, if you have had challenges in your finances, you've gotten to the end of a month and you're like, I thought I had $500. I thought I had $100. I thought, where did it go? If you ever ask the question, where did it go, you don't have a budget. Because you should know where every penny goes. Because a budget is not just knowing where it goes, it's you choosing in advance where it's going to go. Okay? Choosing in advance where it's going to go. Same thing with time. You could choose in advance, like today you chose to be in this class for the next 3 hours. All right? Then you have maybe a choice of what you're going to do afterwards. You're going to eat lunch, and then what are you going to do after that? But if you're just kind of wandering around, responding to life and just kind of flowing, you will end up wasting a lot of time. Well, we do that with our money, too. You walk into a store, you should know exactly how much you're spending, what your limits are, what you're purchasing. Don't just go shopping and be like, oh, I'm just going to wander around the store and maybe buy something or something. No. I want you to kind of embrace the more masculine idea. If I walk into a store, I'm going there to buy a shirt or a belt or pants or shoes or something. I'm going there to buy something. I know what it is. I'm going to go find that part of the store, and that's what I'm going to buy. Now, if I want to wander around the store and look at other things, those might be things that are ideas to put in the budget for next time. Okay? But try to be focused. You walk in the supermarket. Okay? I do like to go up and down the aisles to get in case something there triggers that I forgot. Forgot is not the same as impulse buying, okay? But I may recognize, oh man, I forgot about that. It was supposed to be on my list, and I need that. But otherwise, no impulse buying. If you didn't budget for it, you didn't budget for it. Okay? So, I talk about the budget real quick for you. How do you set up a budget? All right? So we talked about this a little bit the other day. Number one, you have to have an idea of what you've already been doing. It's very hard to decide how much money to spend on food next month if you have no idea how much money you generally spend on food. You just don't know. Let's say you budget $100. Well, maybe you spend normally $200. Okay? we can be wrong in both directions. You may think, man, I spend like $500 a month on food. Maybe you don't. Maybe you only spend $200. Then your budget is still not right. Money's not allocated properly. So all of you have bank statements, credit card statements. Cash is a little bit tougher. So this is what you need to do. Go get, today it's now in October, right? Go get July, August, and September's statements, right? Last 3 months. You're going to bring that information into a tracking sheet. I would use a spreadsheet. Almost all of them will give you those things in a Excel file or a CSV file or something, if you guys know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you need to learn a little bit about spreadsheets. And then you can bring all that information into one, compile it. I know some of you are going, I don't know how to do any of that. You can figure it out. You can find out and ask somebody who knows how to do that. Or type it all in. I don't care. Write it on a piece of paper. Do it by hand. Get your statements and start tracking everything by what category it was. This was clothing. This was food. This was shelter, utilities, insurance, okay? All these different things. Hold on. I have a paper for that. Let me see if I have that here. Okay, I printed out one of my budget sheets. Okay? These are the things I have on a general budget sheet. Housing, which is rent or mortgage. Insurance, meaning for the house, okay? Utilities, electric, gas, water, trash, okay? Transportation, your vehicle needs insurance, gas, maintenance, registration. Phone, I'll have one. That's not free. Food, clothing, toiletries, household goods. Household goods, what do you need? Like paper towels and toilet paper and shampoo and soap and whatever, right? Laundry detergent. Okay, maybe you don't even have a washer dryer, so then make sure you put that in your budget. Not the washer dryer, but the fact that you go to the laundromat, okay? Whatever it's costing you. Health. Maybe you need insurance. Maybe you have medical expenses, dental expenses, vision expenses, hearing expenses, medication and supplements. Boy, that's a big one nowadays. Okay, a lot of people spending a lot of money on supplements and medications. And the equipment you have to purchase. All right, I've got a CPAP. Means every now and then I got to buy new masks and new tubes and all the other stuff. How about life insurance, which most people don't have? Okay? We got to be planning for the adverse things in life. We'll talk about that when we get to that section. How about entertainment? I don't want you to think that entertainment shouldn't be in your budget. It should be. So that should be things like your internet, your cable, meals, snacks, coffee, things that are entertainment, extras, right? Movies, games. You know, some people like to play games that cost money, okay, on their phones or on their computers or whatever, okay? Entertainment should be in your budget. You should be able to have some fun. But you shouldn't be doing that when you don't have any money. At least not entertainment that costs money when you don't have any money. What about vacations and travel? A lot of people are like, well, I never get to go on vacation. Well, because you don't have any money to go. Okay, what if you had the money to go? See, that's the beauty of second tithe. Second tithe forces you to not have, well, it takes away that excuse. Well, I can't afford to go anywhere for Sukkot. Yes, you can. You got second tithe. We got people calling up all the time saying, well, I want to come, but I don't have any money. Do you make any money? Well, yeah, I have a job. So where's your second tithe? Well, I can't afford to do that. That's a problem. I'm not saying it's a problem just vertically, spiritually. I'm saying it's a problem that you don't make enough to do these basic things. All right? How about debt? All your credit cards, loans, all your payments, right? All these things can go onto a sheet, okay? Then on the opposite side, to balance that out, you have your income. You got one job, you got one income. You got two jobs, you got two incomes. You need to put those in there. When you add the incomes together and subtract the expenses, then you'll know if you're in the black or in the red. If you're in the red, you're in trouble. That means you're bleeding out money somewhere. You just don't have enough money, okay? You need to have something else very importantly in your budget. When you're doing the budget, it should be a monthly budget, okay? So on my little spreadsheet, I've got 12 columns of the 12 months of that year. It doesn't matter which month you're starting with. You can start with November and go all the way to next October, okay? So you get a full year in. Now, because you want a sort of a full year picture of what's been going on. But when you're doing your budget, understand that there are 4.33333333 weeks in a month. There aren't 4 weeks in a month. So when you're doing something that's a monthly expense, you need to be kind of multiplying that times 4.33. If it's a weekly thing, I mean, if you know what you get for the week. Well, I spend, $40 a week or $20 a week on gas. If it's a monthly budget, multiply that times 4.3333. All right, not just 4. That'll give you your monthly. If you're not sure, if you know something on an annual basis, easy. Just divide it by 12. Put 1/12 of it in each box. Okay? But also remember, when you're doing this, there's a thing called taxes. If you make $800 a week, okay, you make $20 an hour, you're making $800 a week. You don't actually make $800 a week. You make $800 a week. $800 a week minus taxes. All right? So make sure that you are not just putting $800 a week in your budget. Figure out what your tax rate is generally. If you generally get about 80% of your paycheck, 70%, whatever it is. When I lived in New York, it was like 55. I was like astounded when I left New York and got a check somewhere else. I was like, they made a mistake. There's way too much money here. I got to keep like 80% of the check. But in New York, you have federal tax and state tax and city tax. All right? And state and city adds up to another 15%. Something like that. Like 8% for one, like 6% for the other. I mean, it's crazy, all right? You're paying like 40% taxes. But you need to make sure your budget is based on the money you actually have access to, all right? So when you look at your paycheck, budget it based on the net, what you actually get to keep. Don't budget it on what you think you make. Go ahead and look at a month's worth of checks on what do you normally make in a month. Or if you get paid every week and you get the same check every week, multiply that by 4.33333. Okay? If you get paid every other week, okay, better and easier math to make sure you're right on a month, multiply that times 26, right? You get 26 checks a year, then divide that by 12. Am I confusing people with the simple math? All right? You get paid twice, every 2 weeks. How many 2 weeks are there in a year? 26 sets of 2 weeks, right? So just multiply it out and divide by 12. I want your budget to be, as you can tell, accurate. Important that it's accurate, all right? Okay. Then, if you can do it, you're going to need to budget in things like emergency funds, tithing, any kind of legacy or giving, all these things that you're not at level 0 doing yet, okay? Now, we're still at level 0. So level 0 people, you know what they have? This is the dumbest thing. I'm not picking on you. I'm not calling you stupid, but this is the dumbest thing. You have consumer debt. What is consumer debt? It's debt you have because you wanted to buy something. Okay? Something you're consuming. Don't ever, if you can avoid it, please, and make the effort to avoid, don't have consumer debt. Never borrow to buy something that you're going to consume, use. The exception would be maybe, but doesn't have to be, would maybe be a car, certainly might be a house, okay? The one you're going to live in. But otherwise, you do not use your credit card to go shopping. You don't use your credit card to buy clothes or food or anything else in your budget. That's your normal purchases and consuming. No. Okay? Now, if you are going to use a credit card, excuse me, as cash, what I mean by that is you're not going to be borrowing. You're going to pay it off every month. So I put my utilities on my American Express. I put a bunch of other things like that, but I pay it every month. I get benefits from that, all the benefits that cards give you. I have one that's for travel, so I get special deals when I travel, or you get points and things, whatever. But I don't spend with the credit card in terms of creating debt. I spend it as if it was cash. It's in my budget, but instead of spending cash, I use the card. I do not have any consumer debt. My cards get paid off every month in full. Actually, my card. You don't need a lot of them. I have one, okay? And that one card gets used and paid off every month. No consumer debt. Okay, you're spending more than you. This is the other thing you need to understand with consumer debt. You will spend more, okay, using a card than you would if you ever used cash. All right, you're spending more than you have through through credit cards and loans on consumables That's what the consumer debt is, okay? You're spending more money this way. Now, if you had, I got a piece of paper in my pocket here. What is this? A $1 bill, okay? When I take this out to spend it, it hurts a little bit more than if I take out a piece of plastic, okay? All right. Here's plastic. Here's paper. This is painless. You just kind of throw it out there. You're not thinking about what it's going to cost you later when you have to pay the bill. You're not worried about when it comes in. All you're doing is just kind of throwing this out there, tapping it, or whatever you're doing, right? Maybe you want to switch and start using this some more so that it's something that might actually hurt a little bit when you spend it. Just thinking about that. But no consumer debt. We don't borrow to drink coffee. We don't borrow to go to McDonald's. You don't borrow to pay for lunch. You don't borrow to do any of those things. All right, let me kind of reset your brain, okay? You know what this is? What do you call it? A credit card, right? No. We'll call it an instant loan card, which is, imagine if you wanted to go to eat at a little fast food place and you had to fill out loan papers to do it. Would you do that? It would be too much work even if you could afford it. Why would you do that? You're literally writing yourself a loan, taking out a loan every time you go and use your card. It's an instant loan. Why would you do that? Okay, let's stop doing that, okay? There is good debt. Business people use debt to leverage their finances to do things that cost huge amounts of money, so it creates leverage. Okay, but that's leveraged against income that the business is going to be able to generate, etc. So don't think debt is all bad. I don't agree with like a Dave Ramsey who hates all debt, okay? I agree with him in terms of you getting out of all your consumer debt, all right? But I like more Robert Kiyosaki, who says, he and Ramsey argue all the time because he says there's something called good debt, okay? Now, when you're at level 0, there is no good debt. You don't have the finances for good debt. All right. So at level 0, your tithing struggles, or you're not tithing. You have tithing struggles, or you're not tithing at all. Okay, let me make sure I'm clear about something. I don't want you to feel massively guilty. I don't want you to feel like you're never going to make the kingdom because you're not tithing, okay? I want you to feel motivated to fix the problem. So if you cannot tithe, at least give the widow's dollar. Give something to show that at least you understand that there's a role you have to play that Abba requires of you financially, okay? And then work towards fixing the problem, okay? You know what else? Level 0 doesn't have an emergency fund. What's an emergency fund? Most of you guys are familiar with this idea of a $1,000 emergency fund. That means that if anything major breaks, your refrigerator dies, your air conditioner dies, right? Your car's brakes go, or the radiator goes. So these things normally can be handled by $1,000 or less, okay? So whatever goes, these kind of emergencies, if you had $1,000, it wouldn't screw up your whole life and budget. If you don't have $1,000, guess what? Now you're like, where am I going to get the money from? I got to go into more debt, et cetera, et cetera. So people at level 0 don't have an emergency fund, which is why, guess what? They're always in an emergency. Because even like a small thing, a $100 thing can make you an emergency. You know, they say the average American can't put $500 together like this. I mean, they just don't have even that. All right? You should have your emergency fund. Okay, they have no money on hand, no liquid assets. I don't want you to be carrying enough money that somebody might want to rob you, but you should have a few dollars on you. So you could do something that doesn't need necessarily to pull out plastic and stuff for. But by no money on hand, I mean just like even cash in the bank, like money at hand. I mean, the average person, if they have a bank account, it's hovering around, what do they call it? Overdraft. It's hovering right around that overdraft level. Every time I open up a bank account in the last whatever years, they always ask me, well, do you need this overdraft? I said, no. Like, I'm not going anywhere near that, ever. I'm going to know where all my money is. You only need overdraft if you're not paying attention to what you're doing. You cannot go into an overdraft situation if you have a clear understanding of where all your money is. It's impossible. And you know what? You can look at your bank statement, bank account, 24/7 before you spend any money to know exactly what's there because you have it on your phone. At least you should. Every bank has an app. When I was broke, my wife will tell you, I would call her sometimes, "What'd you just buy?" She goes, "How do you know?" It popped up on my app. I mean, you literally can see second by second what's going on in your finances. All right? So no money on hand, no liquid assets. All right. There's no investing going on. There's no putting money to work for you. We'll talk about that in a second. I'll do something on the board. There's no philanthropic giving. You don't have any money to give to anything. You have no legacy development. You're in frequent financial stress, under pressure, and anxiety with dealing with money. Okay? Probably also often feeling lost and without purpose and going nowhere. Like you're spinning your wheels. All right? That is level 0. You don't have to raise your hand. We got some level 0s in here. It's a little rough. Okay? Let's go to level 1. This is where we're actually starting to do something. Okay? Level 1. Your income can be, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, it's accomplishing the following. Okay? Because, again, you can be at a certain level at different levels of income. Okay, so the income is not the only thing to be talking about here. It's based on what your housing costs and your other needs costs and everything else, where that income puts you. All right, so they have at least one income stream from a job or self-employed business. Still only on the 1. We get to level 2, we start increasing to 2 income streams, okay? Right now, we're still on 1. You're paying for your needs and, right, at level 1, you're already paying for your needs. Your needs are good. And possibly you even are paying for some of your wants. But you shouldn't. At level 1, you still shouldn't be paying for all those wants, okay? I got a thing that Dave Ramsey says that I really like. He says, if you're willing to live like nobody else, meaning like hold back, delayed gratification, don't spend, someday you'll live like nobody else, meaning like in a higher level, okay? But you got to pay the price. Actually, you know what? Let me address that for half a second. If you can learn one skill that will help more than anything else in all of this, it's delayed gratification. We are such a now, I want it now kind of world, especially Americans. Okay, we are certainly, that's why, do you understand why a credit card was invented? Because you didn't have the patience to wait and pay for it later. Save your money up for it. This way I can get it now, even though I really can't afford it now. Okay, so it was also meant to enslave you into debt. And it does. And it steals all your money. But listen, if you could just show a little bit of patience and forethought and plan for something you want and start budgeting for it, you would be in a much better place. Like, for example, let's say you have a car right now, and it's paid for, but it's not a great car, and it's got evidence of it starting to hemorrhage and fall apart, but not quite yet. It still works. It's not costing you too much. You might want to start putting money aside to buy the replacement for that car. You understand what I'm saying? That way, when you get to that problem, you have money for it already. Businesses, smart businesses, not all businesses, but smart businesses do put money aside for all of the dying, falling apart equipment that will eventually need to be replaced. Okay? So that if they know a piece of equipment will last them 5 years, they're already budgeted to replace it in 5 years. That's wisdom, okay? But delayed gratification. You know, children, even adults, if you don't have a car, your first car in your mind should be reasonably safe transportation. In other words, it's something that will get you from point A to point B. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It's not there to impress anybody. It has to safely and reasonably effectively and efficiently, as far as like gas and everything, get you from point A to point B. All right? So you're not going out and buying a brand new car. You might never want to do that. More than anything else, a car loses half its value as soon as it comes off the lot. Okay? You want to resell it. So you would buy something used probably anyway. But a less used car. So you're not going to buy, when you want a nicer car, you're not going to get one that has 150,000 miles on it and is 20 years old. But your first car might be, okay? If it's a car that generally runs well at that kind of mileage and, there are certain brands that seem to do really well up to 200,000-300,000 miles, whatever it is. So you're going to delay that part of it, right? All right, let's see. The level 1 people. All right, so they're paying for their needs and possibly some wants, must practice delayed gratification. Spending prioritization is being readjusted to needs first, then wants. That's what level 1 looks like. You have a working budget. The level 1 has a working budget. Not just a piece of paper they made once and never looked at. A working budget. Something you do the last week of every month for the next month. And then you consult it during the next month to make sure you're spending what you said you were going to spend in the right areas, right? Consumer debt. This is being paid off at this point. And no new consumer debt is being created. All right, level 1, we're starting to at least get that consumer debt paid off. All right? All right, let me talk about that for a second. All right. I'm going to give you my path on this, or my process, and I'll tell you what other people out there are doing, okay? So to pay off your debt, all right? To pay off your debt. Dave Ramsey uses what he calls a debt snowball. A great idea, okay? So let's say you have 5 credit cards, or 5 consumer debt type things, right? Credit cards. And let's say this one has $500 on it. This one has $1,200 on it. This one has $300 on it. Whatever, okay? And this one has like $2,000 on it. Some of you are like, really? Yeah, people have much worse than this. And then let's say this one has $400 on it. All right, which one do you pay off first? Okay. Anybody who picked the number that's on the board is doing it Dave Ramsey's way. Because I haven't given you the information to do it my way. Okay, so Dave Ramsey would say you pay off the smallest one first, then you use all the money that you were spending here to pay off the next, and then the next, right? You start working. It's a snowball. All right? Okay. I want to know how serious you are, okay? If you're serious about getting out of debt, okay? Because if you're serious, you'll do it my way. My way is smarter. His way knows that you're too lazy and you need motivation. He's dealing with the fact that he's telling you you're too weak to do it right. I'm serious. That is what he says. You're too emotionally weak to do this the right way. So let me tell you the right way to do this, okay? Is based on the thing that's bleeding the worst. The interest rate. Okay? So whichever one of these has the highest rate. Let's say your 301 has a nice deal on a 4% card. Some sort of special rate, whatever. You got a cheap card. All right. But let's say your 1200 is at 18%. Which one's hurting you more? The hell, 1200 at 18%. Okay? Think about it as a medical person. Okay? Person walks in, they got in a car accident, and they're cut up all over the place. They got nicks and cuts and everything else. What are you looking for to deal with first? Whatever's bleeding the most. Whatever's the most critical. So maybe they scratched up their whole arm, but it's not even really bleeding. It's just red. It's already cut. It's kind of, well, that doesn't need attention first. But something's actually spurting from somewhere. Well, that's what's happening at the 18%. And that's actually low for some. They go up to like 30, 40. I mean, it's crazy the percent they could do now. When I was first getting into spending with credit cards and being dumb, the highest was like 23%. That's not the highest anymore. Okay? So all of us are going to admit that we're strong enough to do this right. Yes? All right. So you're going to go and attack the scariest one with the biggest percentage rate. If the biggest percentage rate is the smallest number as far as the amount of money, fine, get rid of that one first. Go after the one that's causing the most harm. Okay? Now, you could say, well, let's say we reversed it. The 18% was on the $300, so 18% on $300 is not hurting me as much as, say, 4% on the $1,200. I understand that, but it's still the amount of interest is actually the thing that's killing you the most. Attack it in highest interest first. Okay? I understand why he does what he does. I've taught the Financial Peace University. Okay, I've taught FPU. And they know we, because we're not mature enough, need to feel these little victories. I beat the $300 one. Yay. Meanwhile, the $1,200 one is killing you. All right? Have the discipline to chip away and be patient, chipping away the one that's hurting the most. All right? Let's not worry about the one that's not hurting you so much. As a matter of fact, you know what? I would really want to attack the biggest one if the interest rates are reasonably close, because that one's still costing you more interest all the time. So even just figure out how much interest you're paying every month. Whatever one's costing you the most interest, get rid of that. That's just money just flying out for no reason. Let's deal with the bleeders. What's bleeding the worst? Okay? Now, we're back to level 1. Okay? Let's see. So level 1s have, they're starting to tithe but still struggling. Maybe not doing all the 3 tithes, but you are starting to do a little bit of that. They have an emergency fund of $1,000. That's really such a very important first step. All right? They got some money on hand, but they probably don't have any liquid assets other than cash. A liquid asset is something that you could turn around into cash quickly. So let's say you have money in a mutual fund or a money market or something that you can turn around very quickly. That would be called liquid. In other words, you can very quickly liquidate it, get rid of it, and have cash. Probably not doing any investing at this point or putting money to work for you. No philanthropic giving, no legacy development. However, you do have decreased financial stress, pressure, and anxiety. You're feeling less lost and beginning to find purpose and direction. That's cool. That's a good start, right? That's level 1. All right, level 2. So level 2, you have 2 income streams. I'll talk more about how you get all that worked out, okay? From your job and or from self-employed businesses and stuff, side hustles. You're paying for your needs and possibly some wants. Spending prioritization is being readjusted to needs first, so you're still working on the same thing you did at level 1. You haven't got there yet. You have a working budget. Your consumer debt is paid off. Being paid off. You're still dealing with that. Tithing, now you're doing all 3. You have your $1,000 emergency fund. Now, this is what I guess this is what I put in my notes so you can understand by this money on hand. You need to have money on hand now aiming at what we call income replacement emergency fund, like a fully funded emergency fund, which means 3 months now of expenses. So if you know your budget is $2,400 a month, that's what you spend. So, or let's say $2,500, make the math simpler. Okay, $2,500 a month. So if you were out of work for a month, you'd need $2,500 to pay those bills in order to stay out of debt, right? So we're going to start putting together eventually up to a 6 or more month income replacement in case something goes bad. You lose your job, you can't find work. So at this point at level 2, you have 3 months of that, which would be like $7,500, right? If in the scenario we were just talking about. Still not investing. Still not. Notice a lot of you guys want to go right into investing. Oh, why would you be investing when you're losing money here in the interest rates? Okay? You can't be investing when you got consumer debt. Pay off your debt. All right? Look, if you got a house and that house is at, I don't know, 3%, 4% back when the rates were so good, and you can put money into something that's paying you 6, 7, or 8%, fine. Now we're talking about a different problem. But you're going to pay that consumer debt off first before you invest. We're going to be smart about this, amen? All right? Okay, there's no philanthropic giving going on, no legacy. You greatly reduced your financial stress, pressure, and anxiety. You're feeling much less lost, and you're finding purpose and moving towards the next destination. So now you're starting to move forward. All right, level 3. All right, this is the last level we're going to cover today. And then we're going to get into a lot more breaking down the details. Okay, income. At level 3, your income is at least, now I did give income numbers for the other 2 levels. Okay, 3 levels, 0, 1, and 2. Level 3, your income is at least your age per hour through cash flow on an annual basis. So this is from as many income streams as you have. Your income is equivalent on an annual basis. Because like if you have income coming from I got to draw this out. All right. Anybody know who Robert Kiyosaki is? Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Okay, you also familiar with he did a book called Cash Flow Quadrants. Okay, almost nobody, a couple of hands, 2, 3 hands, okay? Now, let me kind of explain it to you. Why is there circles up here? There we go. All right, so these are your quadrants, okay? So on this side and on this side, okay. Those 2 are who's doing the work to make the money. On this side, it's you, okay? On this side, the money is doing the work. So most of us start off here, which is an employee, E. This side trades time for money. I mean, you could say it trades skill for money, but no, it's really time for money. If I hire you, I'm paying you an hourly rate, okay? It's time for money. Even if you're like a contractor, like if I call for a plumber to come, the plumber's going to charge me his rate for his time, okay? So employee is trading time for money, okay? This is also your least income. You could even be a very high-paid employee. It's the least ultimately because you still are trapped in the fact that if you don't put in the time, you don't get the money, right? Then we have the one that's a trap because it sounds so good and it's not as good as you think it is. It's called self-employed. Believe it or not, you're going to spend more time and do more work here than here and get paid probably less per hour when you add it up because you can put in much more hours, okay? So self-employed is still employed, okay? So I'm the plumber. I don't work for anybody. You call me up, I work for me. Of course, if nobody calls me up, I don't get any money, right? I don't have an employer. Okay, so self-employed. So we're still on the very much you-generated income. The idea is to move as much as you can over in this direction. Okay, so the money is working. So how is that? So you could have a business. Now be careful. I don't want you to think of this. Not that kind of business. I mean a business where I own it, but I'm not running it. I own like a McDonald's and I have other people managing it and employees or whatever. I own a business, a bigger business. I'm the owner. I'm not running it. If I'm running it, I'm down here. I'm still having to be there time, right? This requires my time. This does not, okay? All the time I put on this side was in figuring out where to put my money, all right? And then, of course, the most ideal would be the investor where you're just putting money into something. You could be an investor in a business. You could buy stocks and things like that. You could be investing in gold, silver, whatever. You can invest in anything. In other words, the money is now making you money. And that's where you want to be. You have rental property. You have something where the money is now making you money. It doesn't require any time, right? This is, well, let's see, we'll just make this red, all right? This is hugely time intensive, okay? This one, okay, no time needed, okay? Once you put it in, it's not requiring your time, okay? And that's kind of what we need to be much more effective. Leverage comes from the fact that I can now have money working for me, not just me. I can only leverage time up to a certain point because there's only so much time. If I've got an 8-hour job, and then I want to do some side hustle stuff, I only have so many other hours I can use. If I'm going to sleep for at least 7 or 8 hours, then I only got another 7 or 8 hours I can work. You know, I have breaks for travel and things. I mean, how much hours do you really have in a day that you can do this stuff in, all right? And so just kind of, understand the math here, okay? Let's just do this. I got an idea. How many hours in a week? 168, right? Quick math, right? So Make it easier for you, okay? There's 168 hours in a week, okay? 168. So let's say you work, well, let's say you sleep, okay? You sleep, let's say, I'll be conservative here. Let's say you sleep 6 hours, all right? How many people actually sleep 8 hours? Almost nobody. How many get 6 hours? Most people, okay? So we'll go with 6. All right, so 7 days a week, 6 hours is 42, right? So now we've got what? 126 hours left. Then you work your job. Let's say that's 40 hours plus a little bit of commuting time. Let's give that an extra 5 or so hours at least a week. All right, so let's say it's 45 hours or 46 hours to make this easier. Okay, so that's going to be 46 here. And that's going to leave us with 80 hours. So now we got 80 hours in the week. So what are you going to do with those 80 hours? You could have a whole bunch of work you could be getting done. Okay? I mean, that's just starting to kind of work that all through. So we waste that. That's your moneymaker right there. All those hours that you're not doing anything really productive. But you got to just understand, you have only so much time. And what are you going to do with that time? How are you going to make use of that time, okay? Very important. All right, so level 3. So level 3 people are starting to push from one side, from the left to the right on that quadrant, okay? Going from trading your time for money to having your money work for you. Put those little soldiers to work. These little guys, you get enough of them together, they're an army, all right? They can make you some money. Instead, you just sort of spend them. And just send them on their way. You don't actually make proper use of them. All right, now, okay. You have 2 income streams or more, including your job. Now, here's important. This is important. Absolutely, you should be thinking this way, okay? Absolutely, you should not be thinking about quitting a job to do something side hustle-wise or personal, private, whatever, your individual business, self-employed, whatever it is, on the side, until you've been doing that for at least 6 months to a year and it's making at least the same or more than what you're already doing. You're not quitting a consistent, dependable income for a maybe, or it looks pretty good, or whatever, but it hasn't proven itself. All right? Be patient. But that's a lot of work. I just showed you got 80 hours. You got lots of time. Well, I eat 3 meals a day, and each one takes an hour. Okay, so now I got to take another 3 times, another 21 hours out of there. All right. Still leaves you with 59 hours. What are you doing with all this time? Because you guys think I brag when I say, well, I work 80 hours a week, or that's not even all the available time. Okay? That's not even all the available time. Give me a second. I want to turn this fan on. All right, there we go. Starting to get a little warm in the tent. The weather's just been so amazing, hasn't it been this whole week? All right, level 3. Okay? Let's see. You are, at this point, you've got an active working budget. You're consumer debt free now. Did you hear that? Level 3, debt free. And no new consumer debt's being created. Now, consumer debt free does not mean that your house is paid off yet. Okay? If you have a house, it may not be paid off at this point. That's fine. We're aiming at consumer debt first. Okay? You're doing all 3 tithes. You have your $1,000 emergency fund. Okay, you have some money on hand. You got 6 months expenses in cash or liquid assets. So I'm not saying you just have to sit there and cash in like your drawer. I mean, you just have to have it something accessible that in case you will lose the ability to make money, you'd be okay for 6 months. All right? You're beginning to do investing. Why at level 3 are we beginning to do investing? Because we're debt-free. Right? We're not doing that till we're debt-free. Okay. Some philanthropic giving, some legacy development. We're feeling focused and driven towards the next destination. No financial stress, pressure, or anxiety, because that is taken care of when you've now fixed the income expenditure ratio. Okay? So we fix that ratio. All right, now. All right, we're going to talk about some target setting here. I was going to maybe I'll just talk about it from here and not write it down. So we'll just kind of stay here. I will make all of these things are on sheets that will be on the website, okay? Anything that I'm reading off of was available in the class and was downloadable as a PDF. All right. So you're going to make a goal. You should figure that out today for these things, especially for the first one. What is your goal in terms of having a fully functional and active budget? I'm going to have a fully functional active budget by December 31st. Give yourself a couple of months to figure it out and do it. You're going to create a budget by the end of this month. You understand? Right now, it's the middle of the month, okay? What is today? Today's the 13th. We got plenty of time to create a budget for November. I want you to be functionally using it in November and December so that by January, you kind of know what you're doing, okay? Your emergency fund, set a date for that, okay? Now, some of you are really struggling. I know what you're struggling with. Hold on. Let's deal with the actual problem. The actual problem is called income, okay? Okay, having enough money. So let's fix that problem. So I have said that, in my opinion, a minimum amount that works functionally is age per hour as a goal. Because if you're a 20-year-old kid, single, and making $20 an hour, $40,000 a year, by the way, in case you want to do the annual, it's just simple. Take the hourly, double it, add a few zeros, right? Okay, $20 an hour, $40,000 a year. $10 an hour, $20,000 a year. It's simple. It's not exact. It's close, though. Close enough to make it simple, right? Can all you young people admit if you were making $20 an hour, it'd be pretty good? Listen, I started out, just so you kids understand, my first paycheck was $123 for 40 hours. I remember because it was 1, 2, 3. That's back when we were getting paid $3 an hour. Now, your age per hour is a minimum goal. So, for example, if you are 20, 40,000 is not bad. Think you can live on that? Rent an apartment, pay for food, by yourself, not having any family or anybody else to take care of? I think so. Most places that you would live. Might not work in LA or New York or something, but in most places that would work, okay? But think about it. What if you're now 40, okay, and you're married and you got kids and whatever's going on? Is 40,000 going to work? No. But what about 80? Would 80 work? Somebody said no. You're probably right. But it's more functional. You can make that work if you decided to have a lifestyle. There's a lifestyle that could fit into that. Okay? Now, the way the economies are going, I almost wanted to change this from 2 times your, this is like age per hour. I almost wanted to make it 1.5 times your age per hour or something like that. Okay? Add something to it. Your age plus 5. I don't know. Okay? But this is a minimum target. Okay? A minimum target. There are my targets flying off the table here because I got the fan blowing. Hold on. We use the phone as a paperweight. Perfect. All right? Because this is, now bear in mind, listen, everybody that said no has been at that level and realized it doesn't work. If you've never been to this level, you don't know that it doesn't really work. And by doesn't work, I mean you're going to realize you want more. The lifestyle isn't what you thought you could have there. Would that be right to all the no's? Okay? But what if you've never made $40 an hour? you think, wow, $40 an hour, the most I've ever made is 20 or 22. That's going to be amazing until you get there, okay? Now think about it. As we're going on this timeline, okay, what if you're going to be making, since this is what happens, this is why we get stuck. We end up at some age making some sort of number, like say $24 an hour or something, and we think that's pretty good, but then 10 years later, we're still making like $24 an hour, and it doesn't work so good. And now we're getting married, and now you're a 50-year-old factory worker talking to me about how you're broke, and you don't know how to take care of your family, and you have no idea how you're going to retire. Well, because you weren't thinking about it in the right way. Okay, so let's go in the right way. All right? So here we go. It's the same old model. And this is 65 plus and maybe retiring. Okay, and we're going to start 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. All right? You have to have a career choice. Now we're going to start talking about how we're really going to fix all this, right? You need to pick something career-wise or a combination of the quadrants, right? That's going to move you from this side to that side. That's going to make you at least that plus. Okay, whatever that looks like. What do you need at 20 years old? What are you going to need at 40? What are you going to need at 60? Because that money you're going to need to put it aside so that you have whatever you want over here. Because I'm going to assume at 65, you got to have everything coming from this side of the chart. Can we agree? Everything's coming from the side where the money was making the money. You don't want to be having to hit it hard and kill it at that point. We agree? Now, I don't know if this fits where, timing-wise, what I'm going to say, but since it's in my head, I'll say it anyway. I'm 62. I'm in pretty good shape. I feel like I could really go out there and enjoy myself right now, okay? At 62. Not everybody is in that shape. Not everybody gets to 62 in that shape. Why are we looking at this stupid number to have life get easy? Who picked that number? Well, the people out there that want you to work until you're 65. Okay? All right? It's also based on the idea of Social Security and the government helping you or whatever. All right? I would be aiming, if you're down here, 2030, I'd be aiming at this. Not quitting work, but being able to work less or do whatever I want. I'd be aiming at a much younger age when you can really enjoy yourself. You know what the age you should be aiming at? The age of empty nest. All right? Whatever age your house will be empty of your children, life begins. But not if you don't have any money and you and your wife or you and your husband are just killing it every day trying to work and make money and everything else. But think of it, if you could just go on a trip if you wanted. Or do whatever, just do something. Do something that's, enjoyable, challenging, and creative. Whatever it is, the quality of your life. Okay? The kids, you've done your major job. You raised them, and they're still alive and out of your house. Okay? See, some of you didn't realize that was the simplicity of your job. Get them alive and out of your house. Okay? If you can give them more than that, hey, even better. Mostly they're going to have to figure it out anyway. Right? Just like you did. But what's your life going to be like now when you have that empty house? Wouldn't it be great if you can really enjoy yourselves? Because you know what? Some of you can look around at some of the people 65 plus who are kind of limping along a little bit and they don't have a whole lot of giddy up in their giddy up. All right? And so why not be able to enjoy things more when you're still really got that higher level of ability to do that? I'd be aiming to a younger age. Right? I'd be aiming at a younger age. Now, the other thing that you need to be understanding with this is if we'll go back. I just kept going over there because that's where the fans are blowing on me. All right. So if you're doing this, if you're planning this, because now we're talking about things like, say, 20 plus per hour here, and 30 plus per hour there, and then 40 plus per hour here, and 50 plus per hour here. Okay? It's funny. Every time I teach this, some guy's like, I asked my boss, and he wouldn't pay me my age. I said, that's not the point. Okay? The point is, if you're in a job here that tops out at, say, 27, that job doesn't even get you to 30. So what's your plan? That job doesn't get you there. You need a job that gets you from here all the way to at least that, or whatever it is that you're aiming at, okay? And look, if you do the investing right and everything else, you could be making more like 60 and 70, whatever. As you keep, it's going to keep going up. So how do you go about doing this? We've got things like internet, right? And all kinds of things like Google you can search. You know what I would search? I would search, if I was a young person or an older person, pick your income first. I want to make, say, $150,000 a year, $100,000 a year, whatever it is, $50 an hour, $100,000 a year. So go ask Google, what jobs pay $100,000 or more a year? All right? Just simply look it up. And then start asking yourself, what of these choices look appealing to me? What do I think I can do or figure out how to do and learn how to do, get the skill set for? I mean, you guys don't always have people encouraging you properly on what to do in terms of picking your careers. Oh, you should do what you love. Well, do that after you make the money. I'm serious. If everything's happening on the money's doing the work side of the thing, I can do whatever I want, whether it makes money or not. Okay, I've talked to my children, okay? You know, my son wanted to do a bunch of things at one point that didn't really make a whole lot of money. I said, that's fine. Go make the money first, and then go do that. Because once the money is not an issue, you can do whatever you want, whether it makes any money or not. Okay? There's lots of things that you might have as a dream, but that dream just would never be very lucrative. Fine, do it anyway after you've got the money thing solved. So how do you fix the money thing? Well, first start off with, I need to make a bunch of money. And the more I make that's above what I need, the more I can start pushing it to the other side of the quadrants. Then the money's working too. Then we've got something really going on, okay? You know, one of the most powerful things there is leverage and compounding, okay? So leverage is, you know, I can, let's say, for example, my wife was a hygienist, a dental hygienist, right? And whenever we moved places, she was always able to find, there were agencies in most towns, and the agencies could place you as a temp when dentists needed an extra hygienist. Somebody was out, because a lot of the hygienists were housewives, and they didn't want to work like full-time necessarily or that many days, and sometimes the dentist would get busier, and they would need somebody extra, all right? Well, they'd have one full-timer and one part-timer. The agency was using this leverage. The agency had a dozen or more of these ladies that they would place, and they would charge the dentist X number of dollars an hour, and the person doing the work would get some of that. The agency got a piece of that. So now the agency's getting a piece of 12, 15 people out there, and they're not doing any of the work. That's leverage. You got other people doing, and you're benefiting from that because you've leveraged it. And by providing a service, because my wife was very happy to get paid what she was getting paid, and be able to be placed in different dental offices as she needed. That way she could find work right away. She didn't have to look for a full-time job or a permanent job. And actually she could try out a few dentists to see who she liked, you know? And maybe they would offer her a full-time job. Leverage, okay? And then there's compounding. You put money into something and it does grow. Let's say it has, as an investment, it may earn interest, okay? That compounds over time, all right? Okay, that compounds over time. And so that's a very powerful thing, okay? I mean, if you put $1,000 right now and you're 20 years old into something that earns whatever the interest rate is, you know, by the time you're 65, that's like hundreds of thousands of dollars, whatever it is, okay? But all you did was put in the one amount. It's the compounding, okay? The compounding. You know, there used to be here's a great little thing you could try as kids. Would you rather me give you, I got a choice for you now. I'm going to give you either $100,000 or I'll give you a penny a day, doubling every day for 30 days. Which would you want? Well, you guys are older. A penny a day is going to end up being millions. It's going to be a lot more. It's only 30 days, but it's doubling every day. Okay, doubling. And so those numbers get very big very quickly. So compounding and leverage, big things. So let's start off with understanding that for functional success here, you got to make a bunch of money. You got to make a bunch of money. Otherwise, you're going to be stressed and in debt and all these other things, and you're going to get to be old and have nothing. You're going to struggle. And you got there finally going, man, I thought I was going to be going on cruises and laying on the beach and just having a good time, and you're broke and can't do anything. That's not where you want to end up. Okay? All right, so then let's talk about the other side of this. So the other side of it, so you're making money, and then at some point when you got your budget working, you're out of consumer debt, whatever, now you want to take that excess money and put it into the right side of the quadrants. You want to put it on the side where it is starting to work for you. Okay, you may develop. Now, by the way, while you're in debt, you can still do side hustle stuff and other things that don't take money out of your budget. You understand what I'm saying? You don't have to wait. If you can figure out a way to make more money without spending more money, okay, and so people are like, well, I'd like to do an online business. Good, but don't spend $3,000 on somebody's course to do it. You're broke. Figure out how to do it with all the free resources. Okay, you can't take money out of trying to get out of debt and get your finances right and put it into something when your finances aren't right. I watch a lot of people going, oh man, I'm going to be wealthy. I'm going to do this or this or this. And all they do is spend money on courses. I'm not against you spending money on courses, especially if it's actually a legitimate course, but you can't be doing that when you're in debt. You can't be doing that when your budget's all jacked up. You can't be doing it when you haven't fixed the basic core, okay? All right. Okay, so think of this as, as a launching point, right? So this is the launching pad, all right? This is the core of the launching pad. I've got to have my finances right before I can start, building my rocket ship to take off and go right through the sky. I can't put fuel into this thing if this thing is not, if money is just leaking out of it all the time, right? There's nothing there to build on. Build your base, okay? I'm not a big fan of being employed. I like to work for myself. But every time I ran out of money, if something didn't work, guess what I did? I went back to the core, made sure I had income, made sure I kept my bills right, made sure I accumulated new cash to put into something. We call that risk capital, okay? Money that if you lost the money, it wouldn't mess with your budget. It wouldn't mess with your lifestyle, okay? I was a broker. I was a commodities broker doing futures trading. And one of the things we had to say to everybody when they went to invest with us or put their money there and trade with us is say, look, this has to be, and they sign documents legally to make sure they know and acknowledge that this is risk capital, that they knew that there was a chance they would lose all their money. A very good chance. Okay? The bigger the potential return, the bigger likelihood that there's a risk of loss. Okay? Now, so for you, any kind of money that you're going to put into something has to be risk capital. You want to start a side business? Risk capital. Okay? Unless it's something that doesn't require a lot of capital. Give me a second. All right, so for example, let's say you own a car. It's a decent enough car, and you can go and Uber, or you can go and DoorDash, and you can go and, this is not a bunch of investment. You already have the vehicle. You just have to put in the hours. All right, great. Go do that. You've got a brilliant idea to do something podcasting-wise or some sort of influencer thing, and all you got to do is produce videos and put them on the internet. That doesn't cost any money either. All right? You can do almost all of that with your phone, and all of you have one. All right? So, find ways to increase your income. Go get a second job. Go get a part-time job. What's the right word? I'm baffled. I'm just mind-blown by people who consistently don't have enough money, and every time I talk to them, they have one job. I don't get it. Okay, when I put all this on the board, I left out something. This is war. Okay, you got to go at this like your hair's on fire. If your stuff is not yet where it needs to be, if you're not going to address this and go at it and attack it like your hair's on fire, you're not going to get there. Or you'll get there real slowly, which means you're not going to have what you need at the right age. All right? I mean, you got to go at this like it's you or me, bud. This is war, and I'm going to win. This is something that's going to take a lot of what you got. Actually, all the 7 areas in your life are that way. You want to fix your mental health? It's going to take everything you got. You want to fix your relationships? It's going to take everything you got. Well, how can I give everything I got to everything? Well, you have to. In that area, right? Just give it what you got. But are you willing to pay the price? You're going to pay the price at 65 you're going to be wherever you're going to be at 65 either way. Now, some of you are older than 65, you're already there, but I'm talking about the majority of you are not there yet. All right? But it's going to be like I talked about at the beginning of the level up. All of your choices, all your decisions, okay, that's what's going to get you there. All of your choices now are going to affect where you are then. And you might be like, well, I'm doing okay. Is okay going to be okay in 20 years? Is that still going to be okay? Because if it doesn't change and life, has anybody noticed, especially if you're 40 plus, that the economy, no matter how good or bad it goes, things keep getting more expensive? Anybody ever notice that? Okay. Somebody finds, I remember years ago, I thought it was amazing. I found cheap gas. It was like around $1. That was cheap gas, or under $1. It's like, wow. Now you might be happy if it's under $3. Okay? Things get more expensive. Income is not going up quite at the same rate. You have to make the difference. You got to make the choices. Well, I don't know what to do. Figure it out. Okay, you might think that's a really awful answer. No, it's the right answer. And the reason it's the right answer is because the reason you're here is to show him how much you're able to figure things out. You want to know why you're here? That's why you're here. He's watching you figure things out. Make the effort. Isn't that what we watch our children do? If you're not helicopter momming them and dadding them and like enabling and entitling things, they come to you. You should often say, no problem. I could help you, but you can figure this out. They need to figure it out. I watched a really good video where the guy was saying that when his children would come to him, the child would say, Dad, can you help me with this? He says, yes, absolutely. They said, but I love you too much to do that. You can do this. You'll figure it out. And then they did, and they were proud of themselves,